Hello and welcome to Tech Tips with Norfield. I'm Carl Lewis, Senior Service Technician here at Norfield. In this video, we're going to be working on an older Rev Series Magnum, and I'm going to show you how to change the butt router bushings. So the first thing to do is to disassemble the butt router assembly so that we can get the bushings replaced. First, we're going to remove the flat jam attachment by taking off the two shoulder bolts and removing the flat jam attachment. Then I'll take off the bolts that are in the ends of the slide rods. And after that, I will remove the bolts and the spacers that are in the bottom of the slide rods. This requires an 1/8" Allen wrench to remove the flat jam attachment. The 5/16" Allen wrench to remove the bolts in the ends of the slide rods. And a 5/32" wrench to remove the bolts in the bottom of the slide rods. Be sure to save the spacers that are on these bolts. After the bolts have been removed, you can simply lift off the door clamp reference bar section of the butt router and set it aside. So, after we've unplugged the router motor, the center section of the router slides off the top. Now that we've removed the center section, brought it to the bench, so the next thing I'll do is I'll take the two 1/4" bolts out of this side, use a 7/16" wrench. Those two bolts removed, I can just slide the slide rods out of the bushings to that side. So this is the butt router bushings as supplied by Norfield. You have the two smaller bushings that go here, the smaller spool bushing which goes here. You have the two larger bushings which go in this piece, and the two larger spool bushings which will go here. And we get to go over to the end of the machine now. Alright, we're going to be using the end of the Magnum as the anvil to press the bushings in. We can take the new bushing, set it on top of the old bushing. Be sure that you have the corner of the casting supported on the end of the machine. We'll use the new brushing to drive out the old bushing. We'll do the same thing with the larger bushings. The bushings have been installed. Now that we have the bushings installed in the castings, it's necessary to line ream them to bring the holes up so that they are exactly the same size as the slide rod with a little clearance, and also to make sure that the holes line up exactly so they're directly in line. So we use a line reamer. This is available from Norfield. When you buy the reamers from Norfield, they come in two pieces. You have an adjustable reamer and a pilot set, which includes the shaft, the special washer, and the tapered bushing. So the first thing to do necessary to assemble them, the reamer has the cutter blades and there's a nut on each side. So you're going to remove the nut from the short end of the reamer, set that aside. That'll be replaced with the bushing, which has a tapered side on it. If you look, see this side's cut square, this side has a taper to it. The tapered side goes toward the cutters, and the pilot screws on to the end of the reamer. So the pilot acts as the nut at this end, and then you have a nut at this end. To adjust the reamers, to make the reamer larger, you would take this nut and move it this way and bring the pilot up, which will force the blades up along the reamer and expand the size. To make them smaller, you back the pilot off and use the nut to force the blades down toward the pilot. So it's necessary to adjust it to fit the bushing, and then start increasing it a little at a time until you get the clearance that you want on the slide rods. Once you have the reamer adjusted, it can be set aside, left adjusted, and then reused the next time you do the bushings without readjusting it. So, install the line reamer through there, put the wedge in the bushing we're not going to cut. Reverse the casting and do it again from the other side. So this set of bushings should now fit the slide rod exactly. See that all right? The two smaller bushings need to be reamed in the same manner, but it's a different reamer because it's a smaller size. Place the wedge in the bushing we're not reaming. There's the reamer, do the other bushing. So those bushings now should fit the other slide rods. Alright, so now we're ready to put it back together. We'll take the smaller spool bushing, place it in there, insert the slide rods through the bushings. Install the casting on the other end with the same two bolts. To ensure that you've got it assembled correctly, you will note that the adjustment bolt still comes into contact with the stop tabs. If the stop tabs and the adjustment bolt don't line up, then you have it assembled backwards usually. So we'll install the spool bushings, the larger spool bushings, in the casting here, and put the center section back onto the router assembly. So we'll install the center section of the router back on the large slide rods, like so. Place the door clamp assembly back on. Reinstall all of the bolts as they were. Right, now we have the front router assembly back together. Works nice and smoothly. Because of the way we did it, we did not remove the router from the casting. We didn't change any of our settings, either horizontal or vertical. So everything should come right back to where it was, and your mortise size should be exactly the same as it was before we replaced the bushings, with the possible exception that you may need to correct the depth a little bit. It may be a little shallower with the new bushings than it was with the old ones.